Hi everybody, this is Ganesh. I am going to demo that multi-tenancy model with the interface feature. Before getting into the demo, I just would like to add some brief overview on the multi-tenancy support. So when a service provider wants to manage multiple customers environment with the Marimba, then with the current features of Marimba, that's not supportive for single instance. So with the data type, by achieving that multi-tenancy support, customer or service provider can manage their environments with a single instance of CMS. So that multiple customers can access the same CMS and they can perform their own operations without affecting others. So from here onwards, from this application, so all the customers also known as a tenant for this application. So each tenant should be allowed to manage their own tenant environment. So these solutions also supported multi-forest with that Marimba. So using these solutions, more than one organization infrastructure to be managed with a single CMS controlled by hosting their environment on cloud or service provider environment. Here we are supporting that upgraded customer with the multi-tenant model and the first customer with the multi-tenant model is of course the upgraded customer with the non-multi-tenant model also. So from this data say onwards with the multi-tenant model, the special admin, which means that emergency admin who is having that super admin role. So he will not be having some functional rights like performing any functional activities like LDAP collections and any functional areas. Of course, we will not be having that access to that any web channels. Similarly, like some of the permissions reserved for that primary admin also. So primary admin cannot have permission to perform like restarting the console or restarting that any applications since it will affect other tenants also. So here now I am going to log in as admin and going to configure how the tenant can be configured by logging as a special admin, which is emergency admin. Here I log in as an emergency admin, and under the system settings you can see that new tab called tenant management, and also you can see that the special admin he cannot view that any other channels. So by clicking the tenant management page, it will navigate to the tenant creation page. So once you click on the add tenant, there you can create the tenant and you can configure that LDAP, email and FTP settings and whatever it is, any configuration applicable for the tenant. So for example, already I have added one tenant. So if you go to that add tenant page, it will be displayed to configure that any directory services, database, FTP settings, email settings and application permissions, as well as the properties. So this is the tenant who is the AD customer. I configure the auto discovery. To configure that auto discovery, here we need to specify the property of AD management domain and DNS server, and if it is required we need to mention that AD site information. Already I configured him for auto discovery mode, and also I install the database. So once the LDAP is configured, you can log in as a tenant primary user and you can install that inventory database and reporting connections. It will be whatever the active server list, it will be reflected under the tenant management page. Similarly, I configure the FTP details for the tenant, also email settings. Here you can see that application permissions. So based on the selection of application permissions, the tenant user, the particular tenant will be having access to the specific web channels. Also, we are providing to add the properties for the tenant. You can add the tenant specific properties. So here I have configured two tenants with the LDAP and a DB configuration settings. Also, you can navigate to that data source under which you can edit the settings whatever configured through the tenant management page. If you go to the database, still you can configure the database or you can edit the existing database connections for the selected tenant. Here we have provided the drop down to select the tenant. If you tenant, what are the active connections DB connections it will be displayed. Still you can configure that more than one number of database connections, and at a time one connection will be active. Similarly, like you can configure that directory service by selecting the tenant, and you can add a number of directory service. You can configure a number of directory service, but for a single tenant, and but at the time the one LDAP will be in the active state. Similarly, like all the settings, email, FTP. As I said, the special admin will not be having access to perform any functional operations like resource center collections and any functional operations LDAP sync, since we will not be having any LDAP channel permissions. Here you can see that the LDAP sync link is disabled for the permission revoked for the special admin. Now I am going to log in as a tenant specific user, and I will show that workflow. Here the tenant username should be entered in the following format with the prefix of tenant name and the backslash and the username. Here the tenant name is case sensitive. So once you log in as a tenant user, here you will not be having access to configure the tenant management page. The special admin is the only user that can configure the multiple tenants and the multiple tenants information. Once you log in as a tenant specific user, and you will not be having access to the other tenants information, but still you can configure your own configurations like DB, LDAP, whatever the things, FTP, email things. Still you can go to that under the data source to configure the database and the data directory service. Here you cannot see that drop down to select the tenant. Since already you are logged in as a tenant specific tenant user, here you can view your own DB connections. You can add, then you can configure new database also. Similarly, like directory service, still you can configure that LDAP or whatever you want, whether AD, Adam or someone. So everything will be like tenant specific. You can configure with own environment. So once you log in as a tenant user, here you can go to the schema manager and install that LDAP schema. And also once the LDAP schema is installed, still you can go on to configure the schema manager, inventory database. And once the schema is installed, you can configure the report center inventory plugin. So here each tenant will be having their own environment like a transmitter, LDAP, DB, email, so everything. So you can configure any plugins with your own transmitter plugin. Here already I configured my inventory plugin. And once it's configured, you can go and run that inventory service on the endpoint specific to that tenant. Once the successful run of scanner service, you can create the collection query and run the collections. So once the collection is done, here for the collections I have scheduled email and FTP. So once after the successful collection done, you can go and configure the policy for that target. Here already I have configured some sample policy. Before that you can configure the plugin, policy plugin for that his own tenant environment. So once everything, all the policy configuration, everything is done, so you can go and update the policy on that endpoint. You can schedule and you can update the policy on that endpoint. If you want to take the complaint, you can go and perform the LDAP sync. So once the LDAP sync is successful, you can go and run the scanner service to take the complaint report. So under policy manager or the complaints, you can go and take the complaints report. So this is the complete workflow to the tenant specific. So each tenant, they will be having their own environment and their own policy, own schedule, everything. So it will not affect others. In such a way, it's designed with a multi-tenancy model. So for this tenant specific, already I configured the email schedule and the FTP schedule. You can see the sample mails of the collection report, and similarly like FTP report for the collections. Here I log in as a customer too. You can view the tenant's information and under which tenant you log in. Similarly, if you log in as another tenant like customer 1, you can see the status of which customer logged in. So similarly, any number of tenants, they can perform their operations with their own environment. So this is the multi-tenancy model. So with the beta release, we are supporting only limited features, but during the major release, all the features will be supported. And as of now, we are supporting only 2 tenants configuring and configuring the things. They can perform their own operations for the beta release. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.